Well. Welcome to ELF Live. I bet you weren't expecting these two to join the bunch, but thank you all for tuning in. I'm Jamal Clay. I'm here with Athletes Forum, covering for the infamous and most famous Nick Alfieri. And of course, we got Matt Bressington, the co host of the day. What's going on, brother? How's it going?
I'm doing pretty well, man. It feels weird being on the left side of the screen rather than the right side of the screen. But I want to let everyone know Nick Alfieri is not being excommunicated because of his bad takes from last week. He's fine. He's just upset that Madrid, they won the game quite comfortably, and I think he's a little bit upset about it. But he'll be fine.
Yeah, the league put Nick on the IR for the week just because of those takes he had last week. So they had to bring in the relief pitcher for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. Chat, welcome. We've discussed throughout the way, so we'll continue to keep you guys involved. A lot we're going to dive into today. We got games that we're going to review. We got uh, you know going over the takes that where we missed that, and we're going to talk about players of the week and stuff like that, and MVPs of the week. So again. We'll head right into it. Actually, matter of fact, and we'll dive into one of the first games of the week. As we look at this slate here, the Enthroners versus the Russell Panthers. You know what, man? I'm gonna let you start this off. Give us your take on this game.
Oh boy, was I wrong about this game. This was not one I'm proud to be rewatching back. I came in blowing smoke for the Enthroners team, and they got walloped as a less of a better way to say it. But Panthers' run game was spectacular. Mangle started off pretty hot. He was hitting Nandar, who showed good hands. He was nice at the start of this first quarter, but it just kind of diminished offensively. The run game never really got started. But a run game for the Panthers was incredible, just lights out. Both running backs gone over 125 yards, 2 touchdowns each. Gentry, we've seen a lot more of him as a receiver, but he came in replace of Norwood, who was playing a quarterback rather than Vitali. Norwood himself, I just made a short about it, utilizing the screen game a lot to Matt Cole, who is finally off IR again. I've been saying that Matt Cole was one of the highest ceiling receivers we've seen in this league. He finally got a chance to show it with 2 massive plays. Whatever Moreno got himself in the score sheet. Like, Norwood really executed this game well. And you look at his stats, you see 10 for 13, 145 yards. You think that's fine. 3 touchdowns. He must have managed it. But he played very well, especially for a receiver from UCLA. But he did have have high school experience as a quarterback, and that really came through for them. They dominated start to finish. They put it to bed real early. 50-point blowout is hard to do.
Yeah.
With the Panthers not being a very great team this year, and the Enthroners we thought coming in hot. I think me, Alfieri, Alex, we all picked them. We were wrong. We were very wrong. And the Panthers, I think, will revel in the joy of shutting up a few analysts, and they did spectacular.
Yeah. Hey, listen. We all fell for the trap. I fell for the trap. And I'm wearing this Landshark shirt today, made by AJ Wentland, because I owe him an apology. We all fell for the trap of the Enthroners, thinking that they were hot. Panthers obviously heard it and they wanted to make a statement. It was a big question mark. Obviously, you mentioned because of quarterback what that was going to look like, but they kept it real basic. A lot of outside zone bubbles. Obviously, you got Matt Cole returning, and he took a couple to the crib, and they play well. And I don't know. To this day, I still don't know why teams kick to Bureau. He had 2 returns for a touchdown. This is how he makes his money. This is how he makes his bread. Obviously, he's good on defense, but he's almost a more dangerous special teams guy, and teams still continue to give him the ball. So you get what you deserve. We fell for the trap and Thrones were fool's gold. We thought this could potentially be an upset, but as later in the week when a lot of people started, hopping on the bandwagon, I think Enthroners probably became favored in this game. So, we'll see what happens. Panthers definitely made a statement. Norwood, he didn't really have to do much, but he did what he needed to do: get the ball into the playmakers' hands, and they did the rest.
Wait, Burrell though, he was slow
Two to the
inside.
crib.
Like, why they keep kicking? Like you said, why they keep giving Terrell? He's electric as a returner, the best returner we've ever seen. He had a slower start. They've changed it up, and now he's back to being his old self. I have it written down notes. I had someone message me, be like, "Oh, you go off the stats too much." I took that personally. I've got 7 A4 pieces of paper filled with this week's notes. One of them written down right in front of me. Burrell is inevitable. I write these during the games. Burrell is inevitable. I think that sums up his skill set as a returner. He is the best we've got, no doubt. Their running game was exactly what we thought it would be at the start of the year. We thought that Adams and Zozo would create a 1-2 punch. That wasn't what we saw, but this is what we saw this week, and it worked tremendously. I'd like to see them go for it a lot more, and I think this is a problem with their import rules of the Enthroners and how they've selected it. Two defensive ends as Americans. They lack the athleticism on the outsides. You get Matt Cole, like, away from Rodion, who is realistically the only guy that can compete with him, and you put him on a Hungarian defensive back. No disrespect to the Hungarian defensive backs, but they ain't going to be matching up well with Matt Cole. And he's going to burn every single one of them's feet. So having those Americans, it showed, and they got blown out 62-12.
Yeah, Cole's going to take that to the crib every time. And as you mentioned, the Panthers did get the win 62-12, obviously making a statement to all these quote-unquote ELF experts. We saw what you did there. No need to throw it in our faces. But ultimately, great performance. It's a performance we've been waiting from the Panthers since week one, despite who they were playing against. But let's head over to the next team. We got the Prague Lions coming off a bye, playing against the red-hot Vienna Vikings, currently, still doing what they have to do. In this game, you get I can still hear the Ben VP chants coming from Vienna and Alex in our group chat. Obviously, if you just look at the stats, you're going to see 7 touchdowns, but what you're not going to see is a huge impact made by Kari Pajerina, who had a lot of big runs. He gushed Prague through the middle. The passing game was obviously there. Noah Torre, your guy who you've been loving this, rightfully so, who you've been loving this year, had 2 touchdowns. Reese Horn, a couple other guys that caught in the mix. Welcome back, Florian Bierbaumer, probably one of the best tight ends in the league when healthy and when playing. I think Kari had a big impact, in this game. Defensively, one thing I like about Vienna's defense is it's a very opportunistic defense. So what I mean by that, it's not a defense that's just going to do your job. They're going to do your job and make a play. What I mean by that is, gang tackle, but someone's in there stripping out the ball. And they had a couple of those in today's game. And, shout out to Prague. They made it a little bit of a competitive game. Obviously, a couple deep shots down the field, a couple interceptions that led to some big turnouts. But all in all, Vienna was a little too much. What were your thoughts when, watching this game?
I think you wrapped up nice for the carry. I think he was phenomenal. Do you want to know how many yards the Vienna had passing in the first quarter, Jamal?
Talk to me.
2. They had 2 passing yards. Ben Holmes, I like Ben Holmes, right? This is nothing personal, but he's not an MVP for me. I know he threw 7 touchdowns. I know he did. 1 pass, 2 yards, and 1 touchdown to open up the quarter. It was fine. But Schultz was also a star of the show. Some magical catches towards the end of the game. Phenomenal throws by Ben. I'll give him credit where credit's due. The offensive line was excellent. But what's worrying for me is that Holmes keeps throwing 1 pick before he gets clicked into the game. This has happened a few times now. Yeah. Interception by
it happens early too. Yeah,
exactly. Like by Bodkovic, and he's a great defensive back, and he is very slept on. But I don't know why it takes a pick to really get him into the zone and before he can really start putting together these passes. Because when he does, we saw Horn get involved. We saw Torre, who is, I've gushed over him all season. He's incredible. Their offensive line's incredible. He has all of the weapons, but he's a slow starter. And come playoffs, that's going to be maybe an issue. You can't be a slow start against Ryan, against Serge, against Paris, all these immense teams. I think that they did show it out in the fourth quarter. That was and the third quarter as well. That's really when they were pulling away Prague, because they were losing in the first to Prague, 9-7, believe it or not, which I would not have thought they would have done at all. But Vienna Vikings started finding space. It took them a while to get open, surprisingly. But I think because of the amount they were starting to put on them, Prague got tired. They couldn't maintain it. The Prague offensive line wasn't very good. Like, Perkins did what he could. The receivers for Prague, though, I think could take a lot of pride. They got open a lot early. We saw it with the touchdown. We saw it with Radim Kalius. We saw it with Joseph Janota. We saw it with the tight end. We saw it with Radim too. Like, their receivers are good. Their offense is good. I like the defensive line, because that defense is getting knackered being on so much. They're getting scored on. They're getting demotivated. And the offensive line, I think if they put a few more development pieces, because the Black Panthers just won the AFL. Like, they could take some of that talent now. They're free to go. grab them in, improve the team, try and finish strong at the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how they're going to finish, so to say. And Marcus in the chat said the biggest surprise was that Prague scored. Hey, they scored more than once. And I think that definitely shows that there were some areas that they felt like they could have attacked, and they did that. And obviously, do the deep ball and defensively they were opportunistic. I think Vienna's O-line did a good job on James Brooks, who didn't really get too much penetration, or too much heat on Holmes, but. Man, Vienna. Listen, it is what it is. We're not really going to know what this Vienna team is until playoff time, and it might be the second week in the playoffs. It looks like they're going to potentially get the first round bye, but then you're running into a Prague, or you're running into a Munich, or a Madrid, or something like that, and a team that has some substance when it comes to their creativity, offensively and defensively. So we're gonna see what happens, but champions, good teams do what they're supposed to do, and in this case, Vienna came out with the win, 62-23, over the Prague Lions, and probably I would say maybe top 3 best uniforms in the league. Shout out to Kate, bro. They're definitely doing a good job this year when it comes to those. So. That's all we have to say. That's all we have to say there, brother. So
that's pretty good.
Let's head over to one of my favorite cities in all of Europe, and that's Barcelona, as Serge travel to play the Barcelona Dragons, who's still trying to find ways to form this team and finish the season strong. And obviously they signed a quarterback, Buechler, and signed a running back, and they kept a couple homegrown guys, but ultimately. This game, what? You tell us what you thought this game was.
I was coming in, and the scoreline, I don't feel was entirely reflective of the way that the game played out. I was kind of disappointed with the Surge offense. I mentioned this in my channel. I didn't want to say too much. I wanted to bring it onto ELF Live and see the people reaction to this. The offense for Surge, passing was stagnant. Like it didn't really get much. I mean, to be honest though, Riley did throw a pick and it ended up being a safety, so they scored on an interception, which is not something I don't think I've ever seen before. The run game was spectacular. Literally every time they touched the ball, they were getting about 10 yards out of it. So that was really what killed them off. But the big thing, special teams, they got a multiple special teams touchdowns. I believe 3, and then 1 also got caught back. So they could have had 4 special teams touchdowns. They also had the safety of a punt. So that really won them game. They were absolutely excellent in that area, and I think we can take a lot from that coming into the postseason. We know that Surge have a great offense, but when their offense isn't clicking as much, their defense and their special teams come in and help them win games. That, for me, is the biggest takeaway from this. Barcelona, we know what's going on with them at the moment. It's not too great for the fans, which is unfortunate.
They're trying to finish strong.
Yeah, they're trying to finish strong, exactly. They brought in Buechler, who did have moments. He had flashes. Of course, he's coming in on a short week. He doesn't know the playbook as much. He doesn't have a connection with the receivers. He hasn't played in like 4 years when he was at TCU. The 5 picks, some of them were miscommunications. I think that's pretty obvious by watching the tape. They had a few big runs, but nothing really came of it. And it was drive killers. There was interceptions to drive killers, which was unfortunate. But I think Dragons can take some positives. Surge can take a lot of positives after getting such a masterful special teams display. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that many returns in one game, let alone the one they got called back. Like, it was spectacular.
Yeah, it was a big special teams day for the Surge, and it almost seemed like if you had dreadlocks, you was going to the crib. It almost seemed like if you had a set of hair on you, you was taking it to the house. As a DJ and Chad Wolverine both had returns for touchdowns, and DJ obviously second game back, was able to see the end zone twice, one on the pass, one on the return. I think you see the disconnect, and you had mentioned it, coming off from not playing ball so long and just coming into a situation and trying to make an impact. Buechler, again, his first weekend, a couple miscommunications, balls behind, disconnected with a couple of receivers. That's all chemistry. That develops over time. But you saw that, and you saw a Surge team that just took advantage of it, and a team that, put up 71 points. And I got to say this. I got to get this off my chest because everyone in the Europe verse is talking about quote blowouts. There's blowouts all around other leagues as well too, right? So people who like just want to harp on, oh, there's too many blowouts when it comes to European League of Football. Like, we just had a team in the GFL put up 96. That same team earlier in the season had a quarterback that threw 10 touchdowns in one pass. So don't give me this thing about there's just one set of blowouts in the European League of Football. There's blowouts everywhere. I just had to say that because you're seeing these little comments, and it is what it is. I digress. Serge, they did what they had to do in this game to get the win, and they at this rate. If they keep winning, they're going to clinch the division within a week or two, rightfully so. And really, it's a race right now for points to see who's going to get seeding. And as you can see, what Vienna did, what the Surge did, that point differential is going to determine seeding. So we'll see how all that pans out.
Absolutely. I mean, it ended very one-sided, of course, but I think both teams can take a good amount of progression into the next week.
Absolutely. Well,
next.
Yeah, I had to give my spiel because it gets the juices flowing a little bit. And I got to get it off my chest. I don't give any opportunities to talk like this.
I'm kind of hyped for the week now. You got me a little bit pumped up talking about more of that ball.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, let's travel over down to back to Spain, right? We were just in Barcelona. We're gonna head up to more inland a little bit towards Madrid as the Cologne Centurions play against the Madrid Bravos. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see this coming. Listen, I understand, Cologne a little injured, missing some guys. I didn't see them getting blown out, especially after what they did the past couple of weeks. I felt they would be a little bit more in control of the game, especially from an offensive standpoint. I think looking at this game, I think Coach Jag, who former DC of the Cologne Centurions, former DC of the Raiders, former head coach of Berlin in year one, so he had experience in the league. I think he tried to put the game too much on Isaiah's plate. Mm-hmm. I think this is a team that's been very balanced. We saw a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 22 personnel, one back, 2 tight ends, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and the team that really wanted to ground and pound. You really felt the impact of Amelin not being there in this game, and they really got put off schedule. Madrid, I felt like they did a very good job. Obviously, OB is the starting running back. This dude Molina is growing on me. This dude Molina, I need to pay more attention to Molina because this dude's growing on me. He offers a good 1-2 punch with OB. Gives him a little bit more rest. They both give each other rest, but we all know, the run game travels when you get late in the season, when you get towards the playoffs. But yeah, I think where we struggled a little bit in the game was, he was being late on passes, interceptions down the red zone instead of capitalizing in those moments. I just thought it was a very uncharacteristic type game from Cologne, especially offensively. I actually thought they're up front defensively. They didn't do too bad of a job. They got after Duncan a little bit, was able to force some fumbles, but Madrid would outmatch them for the most part in this game.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, like you said, with Cologne, they put too much on Isaiah Wheat's plate, and he is a good runner. I don't think he's an elite passer. I wouldn't fit him into that category. You remove Alman, it takes away the heart of that whole team. You try and make it a weed show, and they make him throw 33 times. Carlos Hill had a great game. Carlos Hill did very well, found a lot of space, was open on short, medium, and deep routes. But sometimes he wasn't able to get the ball because Weed's getting the pocket closed up around him. He's getting a little bit, let's say, finicky in the pocket, and he's trying to force balls into places where they just aren't going to go. We saw multiple interceptions, 4 in the day. I think you could kind of say all of them were forced into positions, and it was never really close. And Avero's a really good corner as well, so people really do target him a lot because he's slightly smaller, but he's got that jumping reach, man. He will make people pay. Of course, you saw the pick six at the end. That really wrapped up. The score was wrapped up by the third. The last 20 minutes, no one scored. But Cologne tried to make a bit of a comeback. They got that fumble. They got a couple of sacks. Like you said, that pressure in Duncan well. They get down the field. They start moving. Maybe a consolation score. Interception. This happened quite a lot for them. And late picks didn't allow any kind of comeback for them. it was just a very, and then the flags at the end. I got to talk about this as well. I know you said about the blow, and you had your rant. I'm gonna have my rant about flags. Like the flags were very reasonable. I don't want to go on the refs about it because I think they did a fine job. But the teams were getting way too chippy. I know it's a divisional rivalry game. I know that. But when you're down by 37 points, getting personal fouls is just undisciplined. It doesn't look good in the team. It doesn't look good in the coaching staff. They had 8 penalties each for these teams, multiple personal fouls, especially at the end on both sides. You know, I'm not just picking on Cologne for losing and getting penalties. I'm also a little bit going to pick on Madrid, but being better, still getting those personal fouls. It was tense. It was a little bit tense. And it kind of left a bit of a sour taste for me personally. I know some people like that kind of thing, but I'm a classy British guy, and I like to see it go cleanly at the end.
Yeah, we know the classiest of our Brits come from Bristol. Right?
Absolutely.
We know only the classy Brits come from Bristol. All right.
100%.
But yeah, Madrid, they handle business. They do what they're supposed to do, 37-0. Again, good teams. They win the games they're supposed to win. I just thought it was very uncharacteristic of Cologne to come out with that type of game plan. So, we'll see what happens. The next game, this was, you know what? Coming into this game, Paris versus Fire, I thought this was potentially the game of the year. With everything riding on the line, how the game ended last time in Paris, how Paris has been rolling up to this point, what Fire had been doing up until now, I thought this game was the game of the year. But you know what? The league might be in trouble if this is the Ryan Fire team that we're getting. Matt, please take it over from here.
I told you weeks ago people are underrating the Ryan Fire. They became champions. They've lost the game and everyone discounted them forever. But I want to talk about the receivers. I want to talk about Jay. So Jadrian was MVP Jay in its last game. He looked phenomenal. I don't want to go too much off stats. I got my notes. I don't need stats. Jadrian was lighting everyone up. It was very clear for me that he was going after certain DBs that weren't necessarily starters. I think they adjusted to that. They made the plays. Haaland was spectacular against stats. Don't do him justice. Just how amazing he was on third down. How physical he was with those inside routes. You can see the touchdowns on your screen as I'm talking about it. McKnight, one of the best performances I have seen from a receiver in this league. Again, the stats don't tell the whole story. Catching everything. Ball's a little bit too high. Dumb man. McKnight's going to get it. Ball's a little bit to the left. Dumb man. McKnight's going to get it. Couple of the balls just a little bit out of his range by Jay, but he looked phenomenal. Glenn had a slower game in comparison to his others, but was still very effective. The defense, that immediate first play, that pick by Seibel, one of the best picks we've seen of the week. That for me was like, okay, this game's done. Like as soon as they went down, scored with ease, get that pick, immediately score again. I was like, right, this game's over. Clark is back. Doncourt's second half of the year has been phenomenal. The run game for Paris, though, is a multiple weeks where it hasn't really got going. We saw Augman go under 50 yards. We saw Delmarquis not get any of the other ball in the backfield, which is fine, but they didn't really ever give Edwards some support in the run game. We saw Mahonwu lined up captain, and we were like, yes, we're getting more Mahonwu. One catch was not what I expected. I know they've had injuries with him.
It was a great catch.
It was a great catch. It was an amazing catch. But I wanted to see more from Paris. They got kind of dominated from start to finish. I don't think there was ever a point in the game where you could say Paris had the momentum over Ryan. Like Ryan, and I was talking to some people within Ryan, this was not the immediate first game plan. they pivoted mid-game, and they were still, their first game plan failed, and they still put up this amount of points. And they pivoted and ended up making adjustments. I think the last thing for me was just, we saw how close this game was the first time they played. And I, like you, thought it was going to be a really close, tense game. We saw Paris kind of throw it away at the end, and maybe should have come away with a little bit more of that. Looks like Paris did not make the adjustments they needed to from that first game. It looks like Ryan made a bunch of adjustments from that first game and didn't ever want to be in that position where they could lose a game again. And I think for the rest of the year, we could see them go flawless.
Yeah, I think this is going to sound weird. I think Paris needed this game because maybe you thought you were closer than what you were, and this game probably might have humbled you a little bit because the Fire kind of bullied Paris. I'm just keeping it up front. I think, as you mentioned, Fire did a good job of getting Paris out their game plan, but Jadrian was just dicing. Jadrian looked like last year's MVP. Listen, when Jadrian's out there just throwing balls in the coverage and not caring like who's around, and the receivers are making plays, and there's not much you can do around that. All right, and Paris, I felt like they were gonna come in and try to stop Glenn. One thing I wanted to get across, obviously, before going into next game was this is the thing I want everyone to keep an eye out for, because Paris was such a heavy home team because of the schedule and obviously because of the Olympics. Is how are these road games going to play? How are these road games going to play into effect going down the rest of the schedule? Because you still got to go to Frankfurt. You just went to Madrid. You just went to Dusseldorf. Like, is this gonna be their downfall or give them some type of hiccup? I don't know. It's definitely something to keep out. But it was good to see Kofi back. He had 2 touchdowns. Calvin McKnight making some great catches. But Fire defense, they look like last year's Fire team, and they are playing their best ball right now. I saw somebody in the chat saying, I think it was Bison, the Fire are playing the best team ball right now, and they're clicking on all cylinders. Maybe they just need to get back home. Maybe that first game in that other stadium just threw things for a loop, and maybe they just need to get back home to their regular stadium.
Exactly. And they won 38-6. Absolutely dominant display from start to finish for the current holding champions.
Yeah. One thing, before we go to the next thing, one thing I want to give you a shout out, because I think it's starting to play into a role with Paris. You said on your channel, you could watch along, you could watch on Saturday and Sunday, Paris is giving last year's Frankfurt vibes. Hindsight 2020, that you might have something there. You might have something there.
I'm a visionary, brother. I'm a visionary.
Well, let's head over to the next game, and this next game was interesting. This next game was interesting because I don't think anyone expected it to go the way it went, but it did. And I'm gonna let Matt kick this one off.
I mean, first of all, we gotta give shout outs to Malik Stanley, man, and we'll talk about my predictions later in things about what I was wrong and right on. But Malik Stanley looks like he's playing in like a children's league. The way that he's just grabbing the ball over everyone. There was one instance he grabbed the ball over them, just mossed a man, gets flagged, just does it again the very next play, just because he has that ability to. He is a phenomenal receiver. He might be the best receiver in the league at the moment. He might just be that. Man, he's incredible.
Man, 4 games, he has 450 plus yards, 8 touchdowns.
There you go, right? There's not very many people who can compete with that.
Like he's destroying it, bro. My bad. Keep going.
Destroying him. It's all right. I appreciate the stat. He's killing them, and it just reinforces my point. Chad was good. I think the big difference with the O-line has looked a lot improved. The first few weeks were like, well, this O-line's going to be great, and it would kind of let us down a little bit. In this game, I know it's Milan, but they looked a lot more fluid. They were opening a lot more holes for the run game, and these short passes to the running backs were a lot more creative. I liked it. Milan, Salem is a fun quarterback to watch, but sometimes he's making some of these throws. I described it a few times as friendship and vibes throws. It's kind of my go-to because he's going to run. He's going to throw off his back foot. He's going to go 30 yards the wrong way. He's going to throw it up, and it'll either be a touchdown or a pick. And we saw that come down a few times. He threw 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. A lot of those came late, actually, those picks. When he was just trying to force it into these, like, to get some points. We saw a few big man plays, which I'm always very appreciative. We saw Evans Europa with an interception. Yeah, exactly. We saw Lil with a touchdown. He might go down as like the heaviest, biggest dude to ever score a touchdown in ELF history. It was closer than I thought it would be. It was 34-24 at one point. And that was not what we expected. I said before the game about Munich have a really good defense, and their offense is now starting to catch up. We didn't see that much of that defense in this game. To allow Milan, who historically have a really bad offense this season especially, to put up this amount of points, it's a cause for concern.
It definitely is a cause for concern. And I think when you look at this game, and then you look at an earlier game when they played the Raiders, you could say Munich is struggling against mobile quarterbacks that they're not familiar with. N'Kosi Perry, first game against Munich, was able to pull off the win, and it was a little bit of unfamiliar territory. We got Easton Salem, same thing. Granted, there's no film of him in ELF, so it's maybe hard to prepare, but if a quarterback is mobile, quarterback is mobile. And you're seeing mobile quarterbacks have success on that Munich Ravens defense. Between this game versus Milan and last week's game versus Helvetic, that defense has given up 26.5 points. 30 this game, I think 28 or 26 against the guards. So, granted, we all know Munich has the easier road the rest of the way, all right? Easier road looks like Prague, Barcelona, Helvetic, and then Raiders at the end, right? And that Raiders game could be, the game to get into the playoffs. But when you get into the playoffs, that's a whole nother level type of ball, because you're dealing with guys that could also dice you as much as guys can just run on you. So I think that's something that Kendrell's gonna have to figure it out. The head coach there, obviously, offensively, they're clicking. They're putting up numbers regardless of who the opponent is. I think they would do this against a lot of teams, but I think defensively, there's too much talent for them to be giving up what they're doing to these lesser teams if they want to get in the dance and play ball. So we'll see what this Munich team eventually turns out to be. They obviously pull off the win 69-30 against Milan. There was a ton of turnovers in this game, but again, for the Ravens to take that next step, and I don't mean the next step as in just playoffs. I mean next step as like be one of those top tier teams consistently. Is gonna have to start with biting down on defense and again keeping this pace offensively against better talent. So we'll see what happens there.
Next you're excited for this one. I know you're excited for this one.
Next on the list, something near and dear to my heart. Something near and dear to my heart. We go to Innsbruck. The Helvetic Raiders played the Helvetic Mercenaries against the Tirol Raiders. I'm glad they competed. I'm going to say ever since the whole gun thing happened, this has been a different Mercs team. Offensive corner came in. We're putting up points. Defensively, we might have taken a step back, but we're competing. So, and I had an interview with the GM. You can check it out on my channel. And I told him straight to his face, listen, for me, it really doesn't even matter what you do the rest of the year, just as how it's gone. It's about 2025. What he has shown me thus far, despite him losing, is that one, he could find talent. Two, he could recruit, because the guys he are bringing in, again, DeAndre Clayton, he had a great performance for someone who has in the ELF and not too familiar. We talk about obviously Bucher with the Dragons. Like, it's hard to come in when you're not familiar with everything. But he did a good job. Taron Robinson, him and Malik Stanley, I have no idea why they weren't signed in the offseason, but thank God he landed in Helvetic. I like him, and I like Anthony Brown. Terrion definitely deserves to be in the league one way or another. I know he had 2 touchdowns. But let me tell you, Milan Spiller, he is Helvetic's JFC, Horace Flores Calderon. He is their Robin Bilchek. He is their Louis Gaia. He is that guy that has that potential, if he could keep getting better, to be that type of player, and hopefully he keeps developing. I think in this game, shout out to John Falk, got an interception against Nkosi Perry. Nkosi Perry, again, 2 touchdowns, 2 to the air, 2 rushing. I think they really did a good job at getting to the edge against that Helvetic defense. Zone reads, sweeps. That's where it looked like they were attacking most of the game. But again, I'm glad Helvetic competed. But for me, it's about 25. But I'm glad to see this going forward.
It was a great game. Like, it was so close for the majority of it. And Nkosi confuses me again. So he threw that pick, right, to Falk. Like, why would you throw that throw? I do not know. But in the fourth quarter, he was electric. He was running on 3rd down. He was getting them. 4th down, he was getting them. Beautiful passes. Yeah. And I want to talk about Sweeten as well. Sweeten is who I thought he was. Like, I came in and said he has all-star potential. Maybe not this season, but he could be an all-star later in the year if he chooses to stay next season. 98 yards for him, a touchdown. He also ran on the ground a few times. Robinson, we knew what Robinson was going to be. He was amazing in Clones, amazing in the Rams as well. So he was, like, Swinton was more of a question mark. But I think him and Nkosi, they worked well together. The run is what the Raiders are all about. That was hard for the Helvetic team to stop. And I think ultimately that kind of led them down the path to defeat, which is a shame. It would have been good to see a bit of a comeback. But That I want to
Almost
talk about
had-
that pass. I was about to talk about that pass right there. Like Clayton's pass there to Robinson, one of the best passes I've ever seen in football. Like that
Yeah.
was
The
crazy. On one
difficulty,
knee.
the arm strength, to be falling back, rolled ankle, to get it close enough, and then Terrion does the rest. Yeah.
Unbelievable. What the big play for me though, I've wrote on my notes because it was all Terry on Robinson in the first half.
Yeah.
It was all Spiller in the second. They both got 100 yards in the game. Spiller's fumble, that massive hit just forces that ball out, ultimately loses the game. Such a shame for a kid that young, but so talented. I mean, he's one of the absolute lock-ins for a Rookie of the Year slot. That fumble really iced it for them. The last drive when Cozy goes in his crazy runs on 3rd and 4th down, and it was amazing to watch such a competitive game. Of course, the score was a little bit more one-sided just because of the ending was a little bit more for the Raiders. But Cozy clutched up. I thought he did a great job, and I'm happy he's found a bit of momentum because again, the stats for him were good, but you've got to watch the tape and see how good he was in those clutch downs.
Yeah, listen. Obviously, when they brought Cozy in, it was to beat the Vikings. That didn't happen, but he's held ship. He's kept this thing going. And one thing I appreciate about the Raiders is that they're true to who they are. You know, you're gonna have to stop the run, right? It hurts me to say I saw a couple pancakes that I am not too fond of as a fan on that Hill Valley defense. So if you're going to play the Raiders, you're going to know you got to buckle up and stop the run because they're going to come at you one way or another. And that's what they did, 42-28 in one of the most beautiful stadiums in all of Europe. Shout out to Raiders and shout out to Hill Valley to competing. That's all we're looking for. We're talking about all these blowouts. If teams could at least compete, then it'd be closer. But last game we want to dive into on the week, it's funny. These two teams are like the OGs, right? It was the first game year one in the ELF. It was the last game in the championship year one in the ELF, and they've gone the complete opposite direction. When you look at this game before, pre-looking at this game, you would think, yeah, this. It's funny. I saw Marcus put a comment in about Munich. Being that one girlfriend, what do you say? Munich is that disappointing girlfriend it's time to break up with. That's like how I feel about Frankfurt and Hamburg, just because of what their history was, and there was so much success. But anyway, this game, it was an interesting one, and I'm gonna let you take the realm here, man.
It was another real close one. Again, the scoreline does not do it justice. It was 26-23 going into the fourth quarter, which is very, very close. And these two games I thought would be a close one because they're just quite evenly matched. They're very similar teams. They've had similar situations with quarterback issues and kind of just stalling a little bit. But I liked what McKay brought to this game. And he was a quarterback I came in with a lot of praise on during the start of the season when he, start of his season when he came in. And again, the stats don't tell the whole story because he got 100 yards on the ground. He looked great on those massively clutch 3rd and 4th downs where he was running the ball, especially at the end. Good throws. He had multiple drops, which kind of didn't help his stats numbers, but he was really good. He wasn't reading his short and intermediate routes as well as he could have, but he does have a good arm. He flashed that. And he walked away with a very generous win, and that's because of that's because of Forfeit though, because he was really good. He was playing well. He was playing like what we expected him to be when he came into this league. Gets the ball back. They're down 10 points. I know it's quite a lot, but there's plenty of time on the clock. Throws to the flat on the left side, intercepted, pick 6. All right, well, we're done, but may as well run back out and do it again. Exactly the same throw, exactly the same situation, but an inch shorter and not a pick 6. I've got it written down my notes of just iced, like because of the Stanley catch, kind of iced the game when he got the first down. So that was iced. Pick 6 was iced, and then just again, and just ... and just lol, because it's just so odd how I understand you make a bad read every now and then, but to do the same read in back-to-back plays when you've just been picked off down the stretch is confusing. Sandro played well though. I want to give him credit. Markel Castle was on Markel Castle level for him, but Hamburg were in this game until the very end, and the Galaxy took a big win, 17 points, but it was. They got to take some pointers from this one because it was close all the way until the death.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, what I like to see about these games is how when teams know that they're not going to get into the dance and make the playoffs, like how are you going to finish? How do the players compete, and what type of product are they putting on the field? Because you're essentially playing, for next year. If you go out there and you're just giving up goose eggs or just having balls thrown on your head or just throwing interceptions. Nazir Streeter.
Yes.
Nazir Streeter. Listen, I don't know why we got rid of him. I heard he wanted to stay. I wanted him to stay. But man, he's had a better career in Hamburg than he had in Helvetic. And granted, the career in Helvetic was cut short, but I'm so happy for him. I love when guys get a second chance. I love when they take advantage of it. He's one of those guys that, is doing it. And, he's definitely going to get looks. He's definitely a guy that, deserves to play in this league for being his first time over here. Another guy that's doing well was Preston. What's the receiver for Torian Justice? Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, Torian Justice.
Two nice touchdowns over Jamal Liggins. Guys that kind of match up the same in size. At that point, it's just who wants it more when they're throwing jump balls like that, right? And obviously, I'm DB. You're a former DB. We always probably root for the DBs, but we like their ball, and Torian Justin's doing a good job too. So I'm good. I'm happy this was a good game. I'm more so sad in the direction these two teams have gone, and obviously, off season, we'll see what happens here. And you called it. I gotta give you credit because I was pretty high on Frankfurt. You said you were a little weary about them, but we'll see. McKay played well. Fulford again, 2 interceptions, looked the exact same towards the end. We'll see. Maxie, I'm sorry. The Hamburg is doing it to you. But this was kind of me last year, so
yeah, you're a Merc fan.
So again, Frankfurt finishes that out 40-23. It's definitely it definitely was a closer game than what it seems. But we'll see. We'll see. All right. Next, I think we got where we were right, where we were wrong. Am I correct, Maxie?
I believe you are. If Maxie wants to chuck up the ones. I was wrong on a lot of things, but I was also right on a lot of things this week. But we'll see which one Maxie puts up first. I think we're going to start with the wrong ones, right? Yes, we are. So, boy, was I wrong about this one. I kind of talked a little bit about it in the game roundups, but I was hot on the Enthroners. They had a 2-game win streak, which was unfathomable. I saw green on the Enthroners, and I kind of lost my head a little bit. I got a little bit too overzealous. They started strong, but man, their defense crumbled under that run. I mean, it's a hell of a run to try and stop because Zozo is so good. Adams is so good. And you got, all-star tight end, 3-time all-star tight end you got to bring up. A new quarterback, I kind of gave the favor to the Enthroners. The Enthroners kind of let me down. The athletic ability.
Yeah. Listen, like I said, we all fell for the trap. We all fell for the cheese. We thought Enthroners were that team. Panthers said, yeah, all right.
Told all of us to shut up. That's what they told us.
This is Poland. So
what was I right on? I was right on a few things, though. Let me hit with that one. Every single receiver I talked about, I was right about. Yeah. I talked about Robinson, and he lit him up. I've talked about Sweeten, and he lit him up. I talked about Spiller, and he lit him up. I was a little bit worried that he would get less targets because he had a new quarterback that isn't as connected with him. I was wrong a little bit wrong about that one. But I was also very right about Malik Stanley. I said, Malik Stanley has been developing every single little bit more. Every single week he's involved with that Ravens offense, he's been getting better. He looked unguardable. I dare say unguardable. I think he might be the most unguardable player in the league. Like, is that a crazy thing to say that he might be one of the most unguardable players? I mean, 4 touchdowns. He nearly had a passing touchdown. It's just a receiver dropped it. He would have had a passing touchdown. He had a. I
don't think it's crazy to say Markel. I don't think it's crazy to say Malik. Let's see. He has 4 games left. Mm-hmm. Prague, Barcelona, Helvetic, Raiders. What are the chances? What are the chances he gets to 1,000?
I would say high.
He needs about 600.
I think he gets 600 in those final games. Yeah, because it looks like Jeffries loves him, and it's working, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I was definitely right about that part this week. I'm very proud of that bit.
Most definitely. Well, I didn't give a statement last week. But one thing I do want to bring up, and I kind of want to get the chat involved in this, because as we're getting towards the tail end of the season, it's the wild card picture is becoming a little bit more clear in terms that are fighting. So, chat, I want to get you guys involved, and you let me know what you think. We got the Paris Musketeers. All right, we've got the Berlin Thunder. No, excuse me. We got the Paris Musketeers. We got the Munich Ravens. We have the Madrid Bravos, and we have the Tirol Raiders. Out of those 4 teams, who misses the playoffs? Out of those 4 teams, who misses the playoffs? Right? Tirol Raiders, Paris Musketeers, Munich Ravens, Madrid Bravos.
Oh, that's sick. That's awesome. Oh, Max, that's actually so cool. I love that. Oh my gosh. I think I'm gonna go for I'm gonna
What do you got,
personally
Matt?
I think the Raiders are gonna miss it. I prefer the Ravens over them at the moment. They're gonna play at the last game of the year. I'm gonna take the Raiders to miss the playoffs. I'm surprised Madrid it's got a couple of votes already there.
If this cleans up the picture, let me let you know who these teams have. So Paris, they're playing Berlin, Cologne, Madrid, Frankfurt.
I'm gonna put my
Madrid,
vote in real quick too. I'm gonna vote on it myself.
Madrid, and this is for the chat. I'm trying to provide this nice information for you so you know who to vote for. So Madrid is playing Hamburg, Frankfurt, Paris, Hamburg. Raiders are playing the Surge, Milan, Munich at the end, week 14. There's a bye in there somewhere. And then Munich, you got Prague, Barcelona, Helvetic, and then the Raiders. And then obviously Munich probably has the hardest schedule. Paris and Madrid, they're going to play each other again. One of those two, I'd probably say Paris might have the toughest one because you got Berlin, who could just be playing to upset somebody at that point, right? You got Cologne, you got Madrid, who you're competing for a spot against, and then you got Frankfurt, and who knows what we're gonna get from Frankfurt. But early voting say the Tirol Raiders might be the team to miss the wild card.
I'm with it. I'm surprised though that Paris is higher than Madrid, given we've seen Paris play. I know they just lost, but they're still a very good team.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: how confident do you feel about Munich and their defense? Granted, the schedule they're playing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about them going up against the Raiders, seeing them again the second time, obviously knowing and being familiar with N'Kosi Perry?
I mean, the Raiders play up and down, so it really depends on how the Ravens come in against the Raiders because they're going to play. They play great.
They're going to play up that game.
They really do, and we've seen them go against a whole, they got that whole drive, but they conceded 4 downs during that drive, so that's going to be a big one for me. I think that will. I'm like 60-40% sure, so I'm not positive, but it's definitely between those two. I don't think Paris are going to miss it. I don't think the Bravos are going to miss it.
Well, the beauty about this is that all these teams play each other. Right? Yes. We're going to get a Raiders Munich. We're going to get a Paris, Madrid. And maybe that paints the picture a little bit more. Maybe it opens up the door for a team like Berlin who would be on the outside, looking in. We shall see. We shall see. But let's talk about some performances that happened this week. There are obviously a ton of great performances. I want to get your thoughts on who would be MVP of the week.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, here let's do randoms, right? I know Maxi has all the cards in. Let's just pop one up and I want to talk about each one. I think I'm going to just pop up a random one. I'll talk about anyone. There we go. We're going to go with Adams. He was electric in the backfield. We expected a lot more of him running the ball early in the year. A lot more as a receiver. He took a lot more of the rock, averaged a bunch, found good space, showed that cutting ability between the tackles and also outside. He had the breakaway speed. He had a few down the sideline. He ended with 124, 2 touchdowns in a dominant win in a position he has not played a bunch of this year, and I thought he did great.
Yeah, definitely did great, and he's not even the premier back. He splits it with Brzezowski. And obviously he might be more of the receiving back, but he definitely did what he's supposed to do. And this was one of those games where, again, all Norwood has to do is get the ball in the playmaker's hands and let them do the rest. What's the next one we got, Maxie? Jadrian. Jadrian. In the biggest game of the week, Jadrian put on his best performance of the year. 287, 4 touchdowns. Not just the stats. how he looked, where he was throwing the ball, who he was throwing it to, and the type of coverages. The guys he got involved, he knew when to work the middle, obviously on the slants with Kofi. He knew when to take shots with Calvin McKnight downfield. Glenn probably could have took the day off. In all fairness, because JJ was just listen. I got you, bro. He carried the load, so JJ definitely put on a great performance.
Yeah, he did. And Glenn had that wrist injury early, so I think it just kind of helped that Clark was on such a good run of form. Obviously, coming in from the Frankfurt game, he was great there and just tore up a team that he is known to tear up. He's got like a bunch of records against Paris, and he is phenomenal once again.
Absolutely.
What's next? Here we are. Ben Holmes. I know I know a little bit, but he still got 7 touchdowns. He got 265 yards. He was managing the space very well. He's finding open spots with Reese Horn, with Torre. He found the open man extremely well. He used his protection. He went through his progressions like an elite level quarterback. He showed he can find the end zone. That's for damn sure. And he gets 7 touchdowns. Big statement one against a lesser team, which may be considered into MVP voting. But I know that Alex is somewhere. He can hear me probably all the way over in the Philippines, wherever he's at the moment. But Ben Holmes had an amazing game. Ben Holmes
definitely had an amazing game. When you see 7 touchdowns, maybe you think it might get more yardage, but at the end of the day, 7-7. We obviously know who it was up against, but we're not going to get an understanding of who Vienna is until obviously we probably get into the playoffs.
Yeah, who's next? There you go.
Chad was out there toting the rock too. I mean, it's easy when you got a 6'8", 280-pound receiver that can run as fast as probably Tyreek Hill, the ELF version, but Chad was out there toting it. Obviously, there were a couple of interceptions in there, went across the middle a couple times where he got picked off. And that game was more competitive than we thought. Like, obviously, if we were to see this and it was a blowout, it would kind of be like the Ben Holmes situation. But in a game where he had to keep scoring, to put up points. Chad also had a great performance. I would also say one of the things you got wrong, Matt. I think I might have heard you correctly say you might be a couple 400 passing yards quarterbacks this week.
Yes,
I think Chad got close, but unfortunately, 42 yards away to get at least one of them.
None of them got anything. That was to be one of my ones I got wrong. I completely forgot about. I talked about very briefly. I was wrong on that massively. No one got near 400 yards. And I really expected them to. Like, none of the quarterbacks, they threw set. There we go. So 0. A man threw 7 touchdowns and still didn't even get 300, let alone 400. I thought that Mangle and the worst passing defense in the league, or at least one of them, he'd had a good game, but he didn't get 400 yards. Riley barely got 100. I know he didn't have the greatest game himself. It was the special teams that took over. But 100 yards in the Dragons, Riley, come on, man. I need to start making me look smarter. That's why I got glasses on, so people don't think that I've lost my touch after going 0 for 4 with my prediction on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, next MVP, Max. I don't want to talk about this one. Right, I want to talk about McKnight because he was electric in this game. And I mentioned it earlier. Every single pass that was thrown his way, except for maybe 1 or 2, just because they're a little bit out of reach, were money. 13 catches, 183 yards and a touchdown. Key places of catches as well. He's on the outside, on third downs, on key positions to make like second down, third downs easier. He was amazing. He took up a lot of the attention from the team. And like you said, you mentioned they creep down to stop Glenn because that's kind of what you need to do. And when you've got a man as fast as McKnight, he can split those seams. He can crack open defenses. We saw him against that. We saw him burn people like Marseille Beard, who are not easy people to get past. He's 6'2". He's long. He's rangy. McKnight went past him. And that's the defensive player of the year, the reigning defensive player of the year. He's excellent in his own right. But this was McKnight's night, and he was amazing in this game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in a weird way, it just feels like obviously the Fire are playing well. It just feels like they're also healthy. Yes. Like that wasn't something that I guess I personally took into account early in the season when I was just like, this team looks a little different. And I've been on here before. I said, hey, it's not the same Fire team. Now I'm eating those words a little bit. But it just looks like they're all healthy. Kofi looks healthy. McKnight looks like the wheels are good. Glenn, obviously, he's banged up, but the man probably got 800 yards rushing the past 3 games. It's okay to take a day off. So, McKnight definitely had a big impact this game.
All right, who's your pick? There you go.
McKinby, you know what? He did what he was supposed to do in regards that you even mentioned it, with Yesson. He's a very unorthodox type of quarterback, and you not know what you're going to get from him. And shout out to again our defensive players. He was able to walk away with 4 tackles, 2 picks, and a great performance for that Munich defense that I think can be better. I don't think we've seen the best Munich defense, as of yet. And I think there's still a lot of meat on the bones, and for them to reach their full potential, but. We'll see, but that's not to downgrade my guy's performance, because listen, 2 picks, that's a special night. That's a special night at the crib.
And it kind of sealed the game. His last one at the end was just to kind of shut off all hopes of Milan's comeback. So it was the pick was at the right place, and like you said, a DB getting 2 picks is cause for celebration.
Absolutely.
All right, and then Cozy Perry. I'll take this one because I know it's probably a sore sensitive area, but he was very good.
Where's Ricardo at?
Somewhere, but he was very good. He threw that pick 6 early on in the game, and a lot of callbacks let that get to them mentally and just affect their passing reads. He came back. He looked amazing on the grounds, not just in the air. He was lighting up, especially in his 3rd and 4th quarter. That run, I think it was on 4th and 1, where he just drew and took it out, and that basically sealed the game for them. That whole last drive was incredible. He's made a bit of a habit of this. Like, he did the same thing against Munich. He did the same thing against Helvetic. He wasn't able to do it against the Surge, but still showed the flashes that he's a clutch quarterback. He might be one of the best clutch quarterbacks on the stretch that we've seen in this league at the moment. And he had an amazing game. 4 total touchdowns for him. He showed his ability in the air. He showed his ability with his legs. And he led an uncomfortable situation, which he was partly responsible with that pick 6, and he turned it into a good win.
Yeah, he did. And you gotta give him his props. All he's been doing as of late has just been winning. I'm interested to see when they play the Surge, because the Surge as of late, coming off a bye, coming off a long road trip, obviously that Panthers game, but coming off a bye, haven't been as sharp that first game, and they usually turn it on, the next. I'll be interested to see how they play when they play the Raiders, which is I think next week.
I think so.
They can play the Raiders next week, so we'll see. But that's gonna be the true test, not just a test for the conference, but like, is this Raiders team really playoff ready? We're gonna find out, because the Surge, like, when they're clicking, it's night.
Speaking of which,
Raheem Wilson, right? 2 picks,
that's right.
106 yards. Hey, listen. Hey, my shirt says Land Shark for a reason. There's some guys out there that were dogs this weekend, and Raheem was definitely one of those dudes. Great returns too. Again, going up against a Barcelona team, Buchler, we talked about earlier, but that's not to discredit. It's hard to get picks, and to get 2 of them in the game, you definitely doing some type of film study and understanding how they're trying to attack you. And again, kudos to the defensive coaches, for the Surge with getting these guys ready week in, week out. But 2 picks and 106 yards. Hey, that's another guy that got busy at the crib.
He did fumble the ball though. Like,
he did fumble the ball.
He was at the end of the game. Tried to just pitch it back, Robbie style, fumbled the damn ball and gave the ball back to the Barcelona Dragons. Yeah, he was still great. Like you said, 2 picks. And even though 1 pick was kind of negated by the fumble, he still sent them back 50 yards back the other way, and it kind of stopped them scoring. So the pick still held a lot of value. You are right.
Absolutely.
But I want to Malik Stanley. Here we go. 7 catches, 136 yards, 4 touchdowns. Could have had a passing one, but the receiver dropped it. He was definition of dominant. Over the top, amazing. The catch in the 3rd quarter he got, where he just dragged like 7 men, it seems, on his way to the end zone. Stretched out.
Yeah, he literally stretched probably 5 yards.
Yeah, it's like, when you've watched Space Jam, when he's like reaching out all the way for the hoop, it seemed like that kind of moment we saw with Malik Stanley. I'm a massive fan. I've said before, if he has a full season, because he was in Hamburg, he didn't do too, he did good, but he wasn't this good. I've said if you ride him in the right scheme, he can be 1,000+ A-list receiver. Yeah. We saw that today, and I think he's gonna finish with 1,000 yards. I've said that. I think he's outstanding, and today I think that he might be my pick.
Yeah, listen, for me, it's Stanley. It's probably Stanley or Jadrian, in my opinion. But before we get to those, we do got to highlight. I may be pronouncing your name wrong, and I'm sorry ahead of time. Wapple?
I think that's how it is.
Let's go. Hey, interior D line need to get some love too. When you look at this Vikings defense preseason, on that D line, you saw a JP Brownback, you saw Leo Ballo, you saw Thomas Schaefer, right? Mm-hmm. And then this guy Whipple comes in and has the game he has with 6 tackles, 5 for losses, 2 sacks. Just like it's hard to get picks, sometimes it's even harder to get after the quarterback as an interior guy too. And especially when going up against guys that can move and not just sit in the pocket, which is what he went against this past weekend. Kudos to you, my guy. You definitely put up a show this weekend, and we want to give you some love too in that aspect of it.
Absolutely. But who are you going to pick? You get one, I get one. That's usually how it goes. So who are you going to go for ultimately?
I'm going with Jadrian. Because of when his performance happened in the season, the team he played against, how important that win was, not just for the Fire, just for the division. And I think again, I said it earlier, if this is the Fire team that we're going to get, some of the league might be in trouble. Might be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to have to go with Malik. I was right about Malik, and I wanted him to get his flowers for that amazing performance. As one of the best receivers in the league at the moment. He's going to be my pick. You got Jadrian. Obviously, people in the comments, let us know. Vote on all the polls because we're going to be putting out soon. And it's been a good show, man. It's been good.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, it's been fun. This has been a change of scenery, a different rectangle that I'm usually accustomed to. But it's glad to come up here and chop it up with you guys. And obviously, Nick and Matt will be back on Thursday, and I'll be right back in the chat. I'll be right back in the chat dropping my comments with you guys. But Matt, appreciate you, brother. Maxie, appreciate you. Thank you all for tuning in, chat. You've all been great, keeping this thing, cooperative and communicative. And thank you all for tuning in. ELF show back on Thursday. Make sure you guys tune in. Until then, see you next time.
Goodbye.